Oh, maybe you've got to So the aim of today is really to do a few things. Everybody, I think, knows a little bit of the TIP journey and knows what we've done, but not everyone, probably no one, knows everything. So it's to try to fill in the pieces. Likewise, some people know what we're hoping to do, but not everyone. And actually, we would like to have ideas and input into the next stages of TIP's development and how that can be made, how we can include as many people as possible. So that's the sort of brainstorming bit where we need your input as well. But I'm going to start with a 9-year-old girl, because actually that's where it really began for me, and that's how the Ideas Partnership got involved. Hi. It's really nice to have you here. That's how the Ideas Partnership got involved in the particular community of Fushkosov, which is our biggest project, and the project that you're going to get to meet by video later. What I'm going to tell you about is 3 things that we see as the sort of 3 strands running through the work that we do. The first one was the most immediate and probably the most pressing problem that we all encounter every day, whether we're in Slough or in Kosovo or wherever. You know, how can we help people who are in need? But then the next thing that we realised we needed to be thinking about was a bit more sophisticated. How can we help people in need to help themselves? But it's actually only been recently that we thought there's a step further. Really, we need to be helping people in need to help others. And I think we're quite excited by some of the ways that we've managed to start doing that with the poorest people in Kosovo actually regenerating their own communities. So I want to tell you about those 3 things, but starting with Jelana. And some of the people here have met Jelana. I think, Harry, you met her when you were rebuilding Jelana's centre. And when I met her, she was 9. You can see, she's now 13. You can see from the photograph the kind of community she lives in. You can see that there's not asphalt on the roads. There's mud and worse. There's not proper sewage or plumbing in Jelana's neighbourhood. You can see the kinds of houses that her neighbours and she live in. You can see that unless Jelana's got extremely large feet, she's wearing someone else's shoes. And in fact, those are her father's shoes, because they had just one pair of shoes that would sit by the door, and whoever went out of the house would put the shoes on, and the others would either stay in or would play barefoot outside in the mud and the worse. So you can tell that Jelana's a family in need. But the thing that really struck me was when I started talking to her in my teacherly way, and my opening gambit was, so what class are you in at school? Because teachers are not very imaginative in their conversation. And she said, no, I don't go to school. So I put on my other teacher face, because it's not good when children don't go to school. And I said, well, why not? Assuming she was bunking off or her parents were not looking after her properly. And she said, oh no, I'm too late. This was a 9-year-old girl. So I decided she'd either misunderstood or she was skiving. So I went back to talk to her parents. And they said, no, that's quite true. She's too late. We want her to go to school, but the head teacher has said that it's too difficult to teach children like her. So that made me put my other teacherly face on and be fairly furious, because Kosovo's constitution guarantees universal education. All of the conventions on the rights of the child guarantee that. So I went to speak to the director of the school, the head teacher, and he said, no, it's just not possible unless they can pass a test for us to believe that they can fit in with the other children, then they're too late. Which, as someone pointed out, is a bit like being asked to prove that you're healthy in order to get into hospital. So then I went to speak to the ministry. I said, you've got a school director who has misunderstood. And the ministry said, no, that is the Kosovo policy. So that made me want to do something. And I told Jelana, I speak Albanian and I'm a teacher. So I said, I will teach you until we can get you to pass this test. And she said, well, can some of my friends come? And I said, well, let's go and see these families and these friends. So me and Jelana and her dad, Agron, spent an afternoon going round 21 houses that are immediately in Jelana's neighbourhood to find out if there were any other children who wanted to come. And in 21 houses, we found 18 children who were in the same situation as Jelana. So 18 children who wanted to go to school. There were a few others who weren't in school but said they didn't want to go. That's a kind of different problem. But there were 18 who said they wanted to come. And that night was really, I couldn't sleep that night. That was the feeling like a doctor at the scene of a car crash, or, that sense that I had all of the tools to solve this problem. I had some kind of moral obligation to do something about it, but, also a great fear of whether it was possible to change that. And in the morning I said to Rob, what if I don't work for 6 months? And we'll try for 6 months to teach these children in the mornings, and in the afternoons we'll try to lobby the government and change this policy. And 6 months would take us to September, which would be a good time to give up if we hadn't achieved it, or a good time for the kids to be in school if we had achieved it. And because he's lovely, Rob said, yes, let's do it. And we went off and looked for a property in the neighbourhood where Jelana lives. We found a flat above a mini market, and we held a fundraising evening where I kind of thought we'd need a bit of money for pens and pencils. I hadn't thought of much more. And within a week or so, we had our first day. And I knew we wouldn't have all of those children. It's when someone knocks on your door and asks whether you want to go to school, and of course you know that the answer is yes. So I thought they're not all going to come, but maybe we'd have 5 on the first day, and it would grow to maybe 20 eventually as word spread. But on the first day of classes, we had 23 children, and by the end of the first week, we had 50. So, this thing suddenly became a lot more than the vision I'd had of Julie Andrews, with her skirts around her. And luckily, there are some wonderful people in Kosovo and beyond, and various people offered to come and do one-off bits of teaching. Somebody offered to pay for a Kosovan teacher to join us so that we could split the group of 50 into smaller groups. Other people raised money for us so that we could give the children a healthy snack when they came. And a British doctor gave her time to do some BMI assessments of the children, and identified that they were all malnourished, and so gave us advice on the kinds of food that we should be giving them. And we had a project. So that was the first 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, we got 62 children into school. So that was the beginning. Thank you. Well, yes. And actually, I sort of thought that was it. I'd said 6 months, we'd achieved what we'd set out to do. But just a bit of background, really, about Jelana's community to understand what the issues are and how come those children aren't in school and what might make it hard even after we registered them. 96% of the Roma and Ashkali and Egyptian, which are the 3 communities that are usually lumped together in Kosovo as one, 96% of that community do not finish compulsory schooling. So 4% of them do. So Jelana, was not the exception. She was part of a huge majority. And when we realised that this was a systemic problem, not just Jelana, not just her neighbours, but actually something that was huge, we realised there was probably more we needed to do to keep those children in school. It was no good just getting them there. This is Jelana's mum, Hatema, and her little sister. And you can see the kind of conditions that they live in. Hatema used to, she doesn't anymore, go out begging. And so, of course, having pretty little Jelana with you when you sit outside a mosque with your hand out gets you a lot more money. And so the children were often required not to be in school in order to go and earn money begging with their parents. And Jelana's father, Agron, like every single family in the community where she lives, has at least one man who goes out rubbish picking and scavenging through the rubbish. So this will be full of plastic bottles, or it could be metal, or it could be paper that's collected. But that work is quite hard work. You have to get into skips and rummage through bags of nappies and broken glass, and often children are able to do that a lot easier than adults, and so children are often out of school doing that work. We had probably the lowest point in our time in Fushkosov in the last 4 years was in December, when a 7-year-old boy from the community was killed by a stray dog while he was rummaging through the rubbish. So it's not a place where children should be. Children should be in school. And we needed to find some way to support the families to have an economic basis that didn't rely on the children being out of school. So that was us moving on to the second phase. How can we help those in need to help themselves? How can we give Jelana's family the wherewithal to enable her to go to school? So we had this idea. We found on YouTube how to make soap. I don't know if any of you have made soap, but you can find it on YouTube, and that's actually a rather wonderful process. It involves olive oil and essential oil and some very strong alkali, like lye, and you mix it all together, and it makes this sludge which you pour into moulds, and it's sort of a bit like a cake, but you can wash with it. And we thought, actually, that's a product that could be made by women who have got no education, as the women in this community hardly do. They don't need to be able to read and write. And it's something that everyone needs, and it's something that we could sell and pass all of the money back from sales to the women who produced it. So we started a small project with Hatema, she's at the far right, with Jelana's mum, and 4 other women whose children we had all registered for school. And we told them that a condition of them being part of the project was that their children continued to go to school, and that every sale of the soaps, all the profit from the soaps would go directly back to them at the end of each month. It would be divided between the 5 women. And suddenly, we had, a business. It's now registered as a business. I'm technically the business owner. I think we're the least successful business in Kosovo because we register as 0 profit because it all goes back to the women. And we thought about how we could market and package these little soaps. And the idea we had was to put them in a kind of cute drawstring bag that would, make it a sort of luxury gift. And then we thought, well, actually, we could get some other women to make the bags. So in another community, not actually in Fush Kosovo, but a place called Srbobran near Istok, for those of you who know Kosovo, we found 17 families, 17 women, who were interested in being part of a sewing project. We got a small grant from the British Embassy, and we bought each of them a sewing machine and some training from a local a woman who owns her own tailoring business. And now they make little bags like this, but they've also branched out. I'm sure some of you have had them from me as Christmas presents or has bought them. We now do lavender bags, which are upcycled from material that we're given, or clothes that are given to us but are ripped. Or this is an old Cath Kidston duvet cover, now made into a little gift bag. This was curtains. So we're also trying, of course, to improve Kosovo's environment, because all of those plastic bags that any of you who visited Kosovo will have seen blooming in the fields, they call them Kosovo's national flower. Those need to be replaced with tote bags, and so we've also got the women making tote bags, which we've managed to get some quite big orders from, with logos from companies. So Keck, the electricity company, ordered 1,000 from us last Christmas to give to all of their employees as a New Year gift, for example. So anyway, we started thinking of other ways that we can help people to help themselves by giving them the tools and the opportunity to earn money to get their kids out of poverty and into school. But even with money, if the children want to go and the parents want them to go, if the school doesn't want them there, then we realised the project was still going to fail. And the school had made quite clear, after all, that they didn't want those children. They were too difficult to teach at the beginning. So we employed our first employee just in the summer when we registered the children for school, who is Husni, who you're going to meet later on Skype. Husni's got 7 children of his own, and he is very active in his community, and he is our mediator who visits every one of the children we've registered for school every week at home and checks whether they're going to school, whether they're doing their homework, whether there are any issues. Things can be as small as a knit comb. If a child gets head lice and they're not allowed back into school till they've got rid of them, they need a £2 shampoo and comb to get rid of the head lice. If you don't have £2, €2, then you stay out of school until your head's shaved, or you shave your head and then you wait till your hair's grown back. And that's 2 weeks past before you try going back, and then you've missed out on work. And these very small things we realise lead to huge disruptions. And then the teachers complain, or their attendance is bad, they're going to have to redo the year. So Husni grapples with those really hard, tough conversations with teachers, with parents, and with the children as well. And he's an essential part now of getting our children to school. The other thing that we realised the children needed to get to school was their school bag and their shoes. There's no good Elizabeth Gowing in her dad's old shoes. So we made sure that we gave out clothes to all of the families, clothes that had been donated to us. And in fact, we've continued that clothing transfer now, that clothing distribution. So we give to between 3 and 5 families every week, get a big bin bag filled with clothes and shoes, which means about 1,000 people a year get clothes from us. And they all got a school bag as well at the beginning of the year. But then one of our volunteers, a British volunteer who'd come out with us for 3 months and is still in Kosovo 4 years later and has a Kosovan girlfriend, I think we've got him, he said those children are still not going to stay at school if they turned up at the age of 11, having missed 4 years of school. School starts at 7 in Kosovo, and playing catch up with their peers. You know, they're already on the back foot because they're visibly different. They've got parents who can't read and write to help with homework. They're poor, you know, and they're behind with their work. So we've got to keep supporting them academically as well. So we started Saturday activities, voluntary Saturday activities for kids to come and have maths and literacy and English classes. And we have 120 children who come every week. So that's the children who we registered for school. Some children who are out of school, so for whatever reason, have still not registered. And this is actually the only education they get. And some children who actually were registered all along, but want a bit of extra, extra help, want to be with their friends. So we get 120 children, and they get a bit of one-to-one help if necessary. They have volunteers supporting them running classes. And this is just included because it's a story that makes me well up, but also that I think shows all the things that you need if you need to get to school and things that maybe we don't think about. So yes, you need to be able to register. Yes, you need a school bag and shoes. Yes, you need a bit of academic help. But in the case of this little boy, we thought that he had all of those things because we'd put all of that together. And when he went to register, the school director said, where's his birth certificate? Well, it turned out that he didn't have a birth certificate, and his father had died, and his mother had left, and he's being brought up by his elder brother, much older brother. Now, actually, in a situation like that, it's quite hard to get a birth certificate because there's no one to witness what the exact date of birth was of the child. So we said, no, he doesn't have a birth certificate, but look, you know, he's here and he wants to go to school, and we want to register him. And the school said, no, without a birth certificate, he can't come in. So we worked for about 3 months trying to get this birth certificate between September and January. And in that time, during that time, there was wasn't International Children's Day, but it was some international day, and there was a festivities organised by another NGO in Kosovo, and we were invited to bring some children along to it. So we made sure he was included because he's left out and not going to school while all his friends were. And one of the things they did as a sort of gimmick during this Children's Day was they gave all of the children a helium balloon and a tag on it, and they asked them to write their wish. So I was with our group of about 30 children, and I was running around saying, you know, how do you spell football, and, you know, how do you spell Prime Minister, and helping them fill out these things. And I said to him, so what's your wish? And he said, a birth certificate. And, you know, no child should have to wish for a birth certificate, and no child should be kept out of education for not having one. And in fact, the Kosovan law doesn't say, it's silent on the point, but it doesn't require you to have a birth certificate to register at school. So we did finally register him in January for the next term, but by then the teacher said, well, I'm not going to leave the other 30 children just to help him, and we're at S now in the alphabet. So he's started at school, but he started at S, and sure enough, in June, the teacher said he's failed the year because, you know, that he wasn't there for long enough. So, you know, for the rest of his life, he's a year behind because of that system. So, you know, there's all these kind of battles that have to be fought to get something that seems quite straightforward to get these children into school. Rasul is a different example. Rasul has a birth certificate and wants to be in school, but he's got very poor eyesight. He had a seizure when he was 2, which has left him with very poor eyesight, and he needed glasses. Obviously, there's no point getting to school if you can't then read what's on the board or the book. So we then started up a small fund that we have every month a certain sum available, and parents can come and ask if there's a one-off medical help that they need for their children that will help them to get to school. So it has to be kind of linked in some way. So this is Rasul in his new glasses. So just to move to that final point then, we'd worked out how to help people in need. We've worked out, even a bit more sophisticated, how to help people help themselves with all of the enablers for education. But how can we help those in need to help others? And that's something we've only really been thinking about for the last, as I said, for about the last year. And we have a few initiatives which have really been transformational. I mean, they've transformed my sense of what's possible as well. I think they've given me a different vision for how we can work with people in need. So this is an extremely inspiring group from Fushkosov. Some of them you'll meet later. This is Husni, who we've already described, and Yashar, I think you're going to meet later as well. And I think you may meet Rabia too. And some of you will know Bayram Shah, who's the health assistant. Zufair is our, he wheels the wheelbarrow full of clothes every week to the families who get their clothes. And others are residents of that community. And we chose 5 women and 5 men to be given a year of training in how to run a project, how to change an issue that you feel needs to be addressed. We called them the change makers. We didn't pay them, and it had to be done in their own time. Even the ones who are employed by us had to do this in their free time. And they had inspirational speakers, they had some visits to other projects, they sat down and did really tedious things like looking at receipts and working out where you need to record the fiscal number and how you need to manage a budget, how to write a project plan. And then we gave a small amount of money. The UN gave us a grant which enabled us to give them some money to run a project of their own. Their first project was a sports project, just running a sports day, but they had to write a project proposal, implement it, and keep the budget, do a report at the end of it. And at the end of that year, they came to me and said, well, you've told us now, we're supposed to be change makers and we're supposed to be looking for what needs changing in our community. So we're going to tell you what needs changing. We need a kindergarten. And my response was actually, I'm ashamed to say, seriously, we've got enough trouble getting children into primary school. Let's not make it harder to get them into kindergarten, which the educators in the audience will be ashamed of me for not, identifying right from the beginning. In fact, maybe we shouldn't have even started with Jelana, that 9-year-old. We probably should have started our project with Elhama, her little sister. Because, of course, if you start when a child's 3, then the money and the input, the investment that you put in have a far greater effect on that child's life, on that community's life. And there are no free state kindergartens in Kosovo. Even the state kindergartens you have to pay. It's about €30 a month, which I know is nothing compared to British childcare, but the social welfare is €60 a month. So it's just not an option for Jelana's family to pay that for their little ones to go to kindergarten. So I kind of shared some of this with the change makers, and they said, we're going to convince you. And they went door to door in their neighbourhood, and they came up with a list of 250 names of children whose parents wanted a kindergarten. And at that point I said, okay, you're right. It took us 6 months. But in November, just gone, we opened a kindergarten for 80 children, not for all of the 250, in 2 shifts. And the change makers managed that kindergarten. They were part of the recruitment process for the teachers. They meet with the staff every 2 weeks to review the curriculum plans. They meet with the parents every month to get feedback, to tell them how their children are doing. They've made all the decisions about how it should look and how it should be run. And I don't know what I'm more excited about, 80 children learning their alphabet, or a group of change makers making that happen for their community. So I think that's one of the ways that we've helped people in need help others. We've lost the top line of the title there, but this is bursaries for people to do their high school certificates at evening classes. Another thing we realised was there were quite a lot of adults who, my kind of age, who'd had their education interrupted by the war in 1999, or through poverty, or for whatever reason, had dropped out of school and not got their high school diploma. So they'd done their equivalent of GCSEs, but they hadn't got their A-levels. and some who wanted to go to university. And we wanted to help those people, but we also saw that this was an opportunity to get the community helping itself. So the deal we made was that if somebody wants to go back to evening classes and study for their diploma, we will pay the fees for that, which are €150 for a term, so it's not an enormous amount, in exchange for them working for their community every week. They could choose what they do. One guy runs football clubs, another guy who has an old beat-up car runs a trip to hospital every week for anyone who wants to go from the community. A lot of them help at our Saturday activities, and I think you'll get to hear from one of them today. And they can choose something that, whether it's something that puts them directly in contact with the children of the community, like the Saturday activities, or something a bit more behind the scenes, helping in the office. But what that means is that we have the most inspirational people in that community, the ones who are have the vision to go on into higher education, are the ones who are in contact directly with the kids. And the kids want to be like Hamdi, the football god, and Hamdi is at evening classes. So this has been one of the most successful things we've done in changing the aspirations of the whole community. And then this is the final thing, and the final part of this lot, and we'll see if we can get to see the children in Kosovo. The Children's Council is something that we wanted to do. Those of you who've been involved in schools will probably be familiar with a school council where representatives from each year group meet together with the school, with the head teacher or with a responsible teacher, to discuss how things are going, what could be improved, and feedback, concerns from their peers. And we thought this is a really important part of the democratic process, teaching accountability, making sure we're hearing the children's voice in what we do. So we started a Children's Council, but we didn't anticipate actually what would come out of it. We thought, every school I've ever been in, Children's Council has talked about school dinners and toilets. So this is what we thought it was going to be. In fact, they've never talked about the toilets. The very first Children's Council, we said we were going to give them a small budget of €50 a month, which had to be spent for the good of the whole centre, for our building. And the very first one, they said, well, could we use that to buy a bag on wheels for one of the boys who's got a spine problem and can't carry his book bag to school? I was like, this is brilliant, like we're sort of creating a little Rotary club here. And they have always come up with ideas for, they've always been sensitive to the needs of the more vulnerable children in the community. And actually this picture, and a big thanks to Coxie for his support for this one. Where is Coxie? Anyway, he's shrinking. Was that the children decided on the month that we had that terrible tragedy I talked about of the 7-year-old boy being mauled by the dogs. They said they wanted to spend their €50 on giving money and clothes for his family. So this is them actually walking to the family with the aid they wanted to give. And I mean, that's wonderful in lots of ways. It's wonderful for that family to feel the solidarity of the community. But those children don't have money that they can give normally. This is really their first opportunity to help others and to give a taste of that feeling that I guess we've all had, otherwise we wouldn't be here, of, what it makes you feel about yourself and about the world when you know that you've done something to make somebody's life better. And I think if they are getting a taste of that, then this community has great hope for the future.